is not ready for the next generation of air fighters. But ready or not, fighter jets with unfathomable capabilities and deadly features are finally being developed. Since the first generation of aircrafts, the impact of constant evolution in the aviation industry cannot be denied, from supersonic air fighters to the incorporation of stealthy features and even supercruise. Now, the United States has yet again set the standards for technological advancements, investing a mind-blowing amount of $279 billion to the development of next-generation fighter jets. What is the United States presently working on? What are the capabilities of this next-generation fighter jet? Join us as we explore the captivating features of the US $279 billion seventh-generation fighter jets that are finally upon us. The world of military warfare has witnessed 5 generations of fighter jets, each generation with its own unique features. The idea of aircraft generations, which refers to jet fighters, began in the 1990s. The term generation is used to describe the major improvements in jet fighters as a result of major advancements in design, electronics, and weapons. It is worth noting that a new generation of jet fighters is marked by a technological innovation that can't be added to existing planes through upgrades. And this very reason makes each generation unique. The first generation of jet fighters, like the F-86, MiG-15, and 17, were all similar in terms of capabilities. They had simple electronics without radars or self-defense systems. They were simply equipped with machine guns or cannons and used unguided bombs and rockets. Also, these jets didn't have afterburners in their engines and flew at subsonic speeds, meaning they were way slower than the speed of sound. Let's check out the MiG-15 for a better understanding of what the first generation of air fighters are truly like. The Mikoyan-Gurevich MiG-15 was one of the first successful jet fighters to use swept wings for high speeds near the speed of sound. During the Korean War, this first-generation fighter jet outperformed straight-wing jet fighters, which were then mostly used for ground attacks. To counter the MiG-15, the United States Air Force quickly deployed the North American F-86 Sabre to Korea. The design of this fighter jet was later improved into the MiG-17, which proved effective against supersonic fighters like the Republic F-105, Thunder Chief, and McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom II during the Vietnam War in the 1960s. With over 13,000 units produced, the MiG-15 is believed to be one of the most manufactured jet aircraft, and guess what? Despite it being a first-generation fighter jet, it is still used by the Korean People's Army Air Force as a trainer. The first turbojet fighter made by Mikoyan-Gurevich OKB was the MiG-9, and it was developed just after World War II. It was powered by 2 engines based on German BMW 003 engines. Also, it had weak and unreliable engines and control issues. However, it was a first-generation jet fighter with straight wings, similar to piston engine planes. In 1946, Soviet engine technology was far behind the West. The Germans had not made turbojets with thrust over 1,130 kilograms that could run for more than a few hours by the end of World War II, limiting Soviet jet designs. Soviet aviation minister Mikhail Khrushchev and designer A.S. Yakovlev suggested buying the reliable Rolls-Royce NEN engines from the UK to quickly copy them. Despite initial skepticism, Stalin approved the plan, and the British Labour government agreed to sell the engines and provide technical information. Using the new engine, Mikoyan-Gurevich OKB was ordered to create a high-altitude daytime interceptor with a top speed of 1,000 kilometers per hour and a range of 1,200 kilometers. Starting with the MiG-9, they designed a new fighter with Klimov's British-derived engines, swept wings, and a tailpipe extending to a swept tail. The MiG-15, with a 35-degree swept wing, resembled the German Me-262, but had better performance at transonic speeds due to swept wing research from Germany's seized assets. It had a mid-mounted swept wing and tailplane. It also looked similar to the Focke-Wulf Ta-183, though different in structure. The MiG-15's design shared some features with the MiG-9, while the F-86 had a low-wing design. Early MiG-15s had a roll problem corrected by aerodynamic trimmers called knives. Since it was designed for the sole purpose of intercepting bombers like the B-29, the MiG-15 had really powerful autocannons. two 23mm and one 37mm, with limited rate of fire but strong punch. It could be challenging to hit small, maneuverable jets. Also, this first-generation fighter jet could dive at supersonic speeds, but had control issues near Mach 1, requiring caution not to exceed Mach 0.92. It tended to spin after stalling, often unrecoverable, which was a known issue among UN pilots during the Korean War. The second generation of jet fighters was developed mid-1950s to early 1960s. Unlike the features of the first generation, the second generation introduced new technologies like air-to-air radar, infrared and semi-active guided missiles, and radar warning receivers in planes like the F-104, F-5, MiG-19, and MiG-21. These fighters were also equipped with better engines and aerodynamics, allowing them to fly at and maintain supersonic speeds. While air-to-air combat still happened within sight, radar-guided missiles began to allow for longer-range engagements. The MiG-21 is a perfect example of a second-generation fighter jet. It was a continuation of earlier Soviet jets, like the slower MiG-15 and MiG-17, and the faster MiG-19. Some experimental Soviet jets that could reach twice the speed of sound had similar designs with nose intakes and either swept-back wings, like the Sukhoi Su-7 or tailed delta wings. The MiG-21, with its tailed delta wings, became the most successful of these designs. Its development process started in the early 1950s. In 1956, McCoy and OKB completed a preliminary design for a prototype called Ye-1. This project was quickly changed because the planned engine was not powerful enough, and this led to a second prototype, the Ye-2. These early prototypes had swept wings. The first prototype with the delta wings used in the final versions was the Ye-4. It first flew on June 16, 1955, and was publicly shown at the Soviet Aviation Day in Moscow in July 1956. Due to lack of information concerning this airfighter in the West, early details about it were often mixed up with other Soviet fighters from that time. For example, in one edition of Jane's All the World's Aircraft, the fish bed was mistakenly identified as a Sukhoi design, and they used a picture of the Su-9 fish pot. Third-generation jet fighters were issued in from the early 1960s to 1970. Like the previous generation, these airfighters also saw major improvements in maneuverability, avionics, and weapon systems. This generation included the first multi-role fighters like the MiG-23, F-4, and Mirage 3. These aircraft featured Doppler radar, allowing them to detect and shoot down targets below them. They also had off-bore sight targeting and used semi-active guided missiles like the AM-7 Sparrow and AA-7 Apex, enabling engagements beyond visual range. This meant pilots no longer had to see their opponents to engage and control the airspace effectively. The Dassault Mirage 3, for instance, is a family of single and dual-seat, single-engine fighter aircraft developed by French company Dassault Aviation. It was the first Western European combat aircraft to fly faster than Mach 2, achieving this on October 24, 1956. In 1952, the French government requested a lightweight all-weather interceptor, and Dassault responded with the Mirage 1 design, which performed well in tests in 1954, reaching exceptional speeds that is up to Mach 1.6. It was later decided that a larger aircraft was needed, leading to the Mirage 3, which was powered by the new Snecma Atar afterburning turbojet engine. The first major production model, the Mirage 3C, had its first flight in October 1960 and was delivered to the French Air Force starting in July 1961 with a total of 95 aircraft. The Mirage 3 was produced in large numbers for the French Air Force and many export customers, including Argentina, Australia, South Africa, Pakistan, and Israel. This airfighter is maneuverable and effective in dogfights. The French Air Force typically armed it with air-to-ground ordnance, or Armagic air-to-air missiles. Its versatile design allowed for various roles, including trainer, reconnaissance, and ground attack versions, and several derivatives like the Mirage 5 and Atlas Cheetah. It saw active combat in multiple conflicts. The Israeli Air Force used it extensively during the Six-Day War and the Yom Kippur War. Ace pilot Giora Epstein also achieved all his kills flying the Mirage 3, or its derivative, the Nesher. In the South African Border War, the Mirage 3 was a key part of the South African Air Force's fleet, later serving in secondary roles. During the Falklands War, the Argentine Air Force's Mirage 3 EA was limited by its lack of aerial refueling, allowing only 5 minutes of combat time over the British fleet, even with drop tanks. During the 1970s and 80s, next-generation jet fighters saw major improvements in avionics, like head-up displays and better aerodynamic designs. New fly-by-wire fighters, such as the F-15, F-16, and Mirage 2000, were developed. These jets could switch roles between air-to-air and air-to-ground missions, unlike the older ones that had specific roles. This made the difference between controlling the air and attacking ground targets less clear. The fourth generation, McDonnell Douglas F-15 Eagle, is an American twin-engine all-weather fighter jet designed by the aviation company McDonnell Douglas, which is now a part of Boeing. The United States Air Force chose this design in 1969 for a top air superiority fighter. It had its first flight in July 1975 and started service in 1976. It is worth noting that it was one of the most successful fourth-generation modern fighters, with over 100 aerial combat victories and no losses, mostly by the Israeli Air Force. The F-15 has been sold to countries like Israel, Japan, and Saudi Arabia. Though initially designed for air combat, it could also perform ground attacks, which was mostly unused. An improved version, the F-15E Strike Eagle, designed for all-weather strikes, entered service in 1989 and was also exported. As usual, there was room for improvement, which led to the creation of the first stealth fighter jet that is invisible to radars. This fighter took the world by storm, and to date, the Raptor is still a very important air fighter to the United States Air Force. In the late 1980s and into the 90s, there was a shift in jet fighter development known as the 4.5 generation. This came about because of reduced military spending, which made it more practical to upgrade existing fourth-generation fighters rather than create entirely new aircraft. These upgrades included adding stealth features, radar-absorbent materials, thrust vector-controlled engines, more weapons capacity, and extending the range of fighters like the Hornet, Eagle, and Flanker. The F/A-18E and F Super Hornet is an example of a 4.5 generation fighter evolved from a fourth generation model. The addition of an active electronically scanned array radar was a significant upgrade, enough to classify these redesigned fighters as their own generation. Some manufacturers developed entirely new platforms like the Eurofighter Typhoon, Saab JAS 39 Gripen, and Dassault Rafale, incorporating many advanced features of the 4.5 generation. Improved computer technology and data links also allowed these fighters to be part of a network-centric battlefield, where they could carry out multiple missions. For instance, the AESA radar enabled limited airborne early warning and control capabilities. Later on, stealthy fighter jets became the order of the day and was one of the major improvements made in fifth-generation fighters, something the previous generation didn't even dream about. The Raptor is the very first stealth fighter jet that was made by Lockheed Martin and Boeing for the U.S. Air Force. It was developed as part of the Advanced Tactical Fighter Program for air superiority, but can also do ground attack, electronic warfare, and gather signals intelligence. This fighter jet is obviously a major improvement compared to the first and second generation. This masterpiece was built from the collaboration of two aviation companies. Lockheed Martin mainly built the Raptor's body and weapons, while Boeing provided the wings, back part of the body, and integrated the avionics. The project began with the Lockheed YF-22 and had its first flight in 1997. It was called F-22 before it officially became F-22A in 2005. Originally, the Air Force wanted 750 of these planes, but later reduced the number to 381. However, because of high costs and other reasons, the program was cut to just 195 aircraft, with the last one delivered in 2012. The USAF planned to replace all F-15 with the F-22 Raptor by the 2010s, but due to fewer Raptors being bought, they plan to continue using some 15Cs and Ds until 2026 and started using new F-15EX Eagle II jets. The F-15E Strike Eagle is expected to serve into the 2030s. The F-15 is still used by many countries, with upgraded versions being produced. However, despite some challenges during the development of the Raptor, this aircraft became an important part of the Air Force's air power, especially for air-to-air missions against strong enemies. It has also been used for strikes and electronic support in the Middle East. The F-22 will continue to be a key part of the Air Force until it's replaced by the next-generation air dominance fighter. But before we move further, let's explore the features of another fighter jet with advanced technologies, the F-35. It is a type of fighter jet that can fly fast and is hard to detect. It's the second of its kind to join the U.S. military, and the first one that can fly supersonic and take off and land vertically. The F-35 focuses on being hard to see, having advanced technology, and being able to sense danger well and shoot from far away. The U.S. Air Force mainly uses it to attack enemies by disabling their air defenses. Its design includes two tails that are tilted to make it harder to spot. It has various parts that help it control its flight, like flaps and rudders. Its wingspan is short so it can fit on Navy ships, but one version has bigger wings to save fuel. Its engine and materials are advanced, but it's heavier than older fighter jets because it carries its weapons inside. Although it's not as fast as some other big fighter jets, it can still compete with older ones like the F-16 and F/A-18, especially when loaded with weapons because it doesn't have things hanging on its outside that slow it down. It can go up to Mach 1.6 speed and has good control even at high angles. Plus, it can fly far because it can carry a lot of fuel, and its stealth helps it fly without being noticed easily. But now the United States is ushering in a new generation of air fighters with features that the world is not ready to experience, the NGAD. The next generation air dominance is a plan by the U.S. Air Force to develop a new set of fighter jets that will be even better than the F-22 Raptor and the F-35. Originally, both the Air Force and Navy were going to work on it together, but later they decided to have separate programs. The Navy's part of the plan is called the F/AX, and it's also supposed to be ready around the same time. This initiative led to the Aerospace Innovation Initiative in 2015, aiming to develop prototypes for future fighter aircraft. The Air Force continued this effort with the Air Superiority 2030 plan in 2016, focusing on a new fighter jet known as the Penetrating Counter-Air. By 2018, this evolved into NGAD, aiming to develop a family of systems rather than just one aircraft. This plan includes a main fighter jet, which people call the Penetrating Counter-Air platform, and also other smaller drones or loyal wingman planes that work together with the main jet. These drones will be controlled by people inside the main jet. The goal of NGAD is to develop advanced technologies to ensure air dominance for the Air Force. This includes advancements in propulsion, stealth, weapons, digital design, and thermal management. The program also changes how the Air Force acquires new aircraft, with separate functions for design, production, and support, and a budget of $9 billion through 2025. While a crewed fighter jet is the main focus of NGAD, it will be supported by other manned and unmanned systems, like collaborative combat aircraft. NGAD aims to address operational needs in the Indo-Pacific region by developing a system with long-range and payload capabilities. It will leverage adaptive cycle engines, with engines expected to be ready by 2025. The program initially aimed to follow rapid development cycles, but this was later abandoned for a more traditional approach. Also, Northrop Grumman decided not to bid for the program, leaving Boeing and Lockheed Martin as likely contenders. The Air Force allocated $1.66 billion for NGAD in the FY 2023 budget, with further funding projected for the coming years. They anticipate around 200 manned NGAD fighters, although this is subject to change. The NGAD program will provide the USAF with the sixth-generation combat aircraft in a teaming arrangement with mission-focused unmanned platforms, along with advanced weapons, electronic warfare systems, and sensors to enable mission success in a highly contested battle space. The NGAD fighter jet will be used for counter-air missions, meaning it will attack enemy aircraft and also target ground-based enemies to secure control of the skies for all military branches. This aircraft will offer improved ability to survive enemy attacks, adjust to different situations, stay in the air longer, and work smoothly with other military units in the sky. However, the NGAD program involves secret military plans. The exact design and features of the aircraft are not shared with the public. Despite current aircraft being developed, some in the aerospace sector are already thinking about future planes. The question is, what these next-generation fighters might look like. Looking at today's civilian technological advancements can give us clues. With the metaverse, 3D metal printing, and advanced simulation, it is more than possible to create new weapons, including fighters, much faster. According to technology analyst Rob Enderle, autonomous technology and human digital twins could lead to a next-generation fighter that isn't limited by human weaknesses. This could mean developing high-performance fighters in months rather than years. The 7th-generation fighter could be developed quickly, responding to the 6th generation's capabilities. Also, it might include new, unknown technologies that make it more advanced, but by then, fighter jets might have been fully unmanned. Multinational collaboration will likely be needed to design, develop, and produce the next generation due to high costs and the need for common requirements. Just like with previous generations, a 7th generation program will probably involve international cooperation. Thanks for watching. While you are still here, click on the link on your screen to check out another of our videos. See you there.